se iba al doctor o a cualquier otra parte que fuera de diversión, de paseo.
If you went to the doctor, you were labeled as a homosexual. If you went out for a walk, you were afraid that you would be picked up.
Tenía siempre uno la intranquilidad de que la policía te estaba atrás para detenerte y...
You always had that fear in your mind, intranquility, that the police would come and get you.
Y encerrarte en una prisión.
And close you in a jail. And hopefully this will develop into a more social affair.
Just a moment, the refugee who's here from the camps, and perhaps, but we don't think so. We don't plan to send them out to their jobs saying the first thing you say is, I'm a gay Cuban. They go out to look for work, and they go out and say, I'm a teletype operator, or I'm a typist, or I'm a physician. And we expect them to be judged by their abilities and not by their sexual preference. And in Los Angeles, it's against the law to discriminate against someone because they're gay. Here that they permitted to come in. Usually it was under they sought political asylum, and they would come in, and based on those grounds, they would grant it even though they were homosexuals. And even though
aren't these people also, all of them, asking for?
Along with the 10,000 that jammed into the Peruvian embassy. There were gay people who asked for political asylum who were on the grounds of the Peruvian embassy, and those, of course, will probably get political asylum. But for the others, the other 9, it is very strange in Los Angeles. We've just discovered that we didn't even know existed, and all at once, bam, they've started coming forward and saying, we want to help. They're now coming in to volunteer to help us with Spanish in the office, as well as to move out and to say we want to help with sponsors. There's a large group of women here. The women are not readily identifying themselves so far. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the camps, we've only been able to identify about 5.
No, we have several women that need sponsors, but we haven't been able to get female sponsors to accept them. So we just have their names in the office waiting for sponsors.
I'd kind of like to, if it's Cuba, let me restate that. Is being homosexual in Cuba a very difficult problem, more so than it would be here?
Siendo homosexual en Cuba es mucho más difícil que aquí, ¿verdad?
Es mucho más difícil.
Yeah, quite so.
What kind of like? Could you describe a little bit of what it's like being gay in Cuba?
¿Puedes describir un poco cómo era la vida gay en Cuba?
Sí. Era una vida horrible, desastrosa.
Disastrous, horrible.
Una opresión increíble para los homosexuales.
An incredible oppression for homosexuals.
Se mantenía la incógnita de que allí se trataba bien a ellos, pero no. En sí era toda una máscara de hipocresía. Eran oprimidos en todas partes por ser homosexuales. En los trabajos, en los centros turísticos.
People were repressed in jobs. They were repressed in the tourist centers. They were not allowed in.
Centros turísticos.
Be put in jail for up to 4 years under a new law Castro had.
No tenían a veces razones para hacerlo, otras veces sí.
Sometimes they had reasons for putting you in jail, but most of the times, no.
Porque a veces los homosexuales tenían festines en casas y lugares que no eran en vía pública, no alteraban el público.
Sometimes gay people would congregate and have private parties because they would not have any public place to meet.
Y por nada, entonces intervenían en las prisiones.
And they would come in and raid the party for no reason at all and lock them all up.
Allí pues se lo juntaban con todo tipo de personas que eran asesinos.
Regents.
I will answer that for you because I've known him. Mr. Lara sought political asylum at the Peruvian embassy. He left his mother and brothers at home. He could not stand it any longer. He took asylum at the embassy, stayed under a tree for 11 days without food and water until he was granted a safe conduct pass out of Cuba.
What kind of precautions did he have to take
Community churches in cooperation with gay organizations all over this country are in the process of resettling what we have been able to identify as over 5,000 gay and lesbian Cubans who have come into this country in this last wave. In Los Angeles, we're in the process of the first 200 who are coming into the city being placed, and an additional 500, 700 in all, that we plan to help relocate here in the Los Angeles area. With me is Mr. Dale Leach, who is facilitator of the Cuban program on the extreme side. We need sponsors, more sponsors than we have this moment. We have lots of people who have called in, but there was some publicity that seemed to imply that the federal government was going to shut off the gay Cuban situation into large metropolitan areas, and that's just not true. So we've had some people who said, well, I didn't think I could sponsor, that the program's not going on. And so we're looking for sponsors, but I'm going to ask at this time if Aldo Benihan will make his statement, and then we'll open.
Volunteer teachers. It's not an easy job, but it'll work. Here's Jorge. ¿Puedes decir algo
In Spanish,
en Spanish?
I don't speak English.
Okay. Why don't we open it for questions, and then that'll be...
Alien gays. What are they saying to you now?
What they're saying to us at this point is very interesting. We, all the refugees who came in are in limbo. Gay or non-gay, it doesn't matter. The government has not decided yet what category they're going to let them into the country on. So every 6 months, until Congress decides, they're in limbo. I met with Mr. Roger Winter, I believe, in the State Department in Washington, D.C. We had a discussion about this. At this point, the government is taking the attitude that nobody's going to be sent back to Cuba just because they're a homosexual or a lesbian. So we don't know yet.
But
we're prepared to fight it, to take it to court. It takes years. We have cases right now of an Australian in Los Angeles with his lover, Tony Sullivan. We've been fighting that case for 7 years, and we're still nowhere close to resolving that.
by identifying, specifically identifying gays, though, who are from Cuba, are you not maybe endangering their future? Could you get a little closer to the microphone?
Sure. Okay. There are several people that have already been identified by the State Department, and the way they did that is as the people came off the boats, the State Department asked the men, they didn't think about the women, they asked the men, how many of you are homosexual? They had them raise their hand, and then they said, those of you who stated that just to get out of Cuba, take your hand down. So the people with their hands left up were marked down on their records as homosexual. These people cannot attain to permanent residency or citizenship in this country until the law is changed. However, the remainder of those in the camps that have not so identified themselves as gay are not now being identified as gay. We are letting the refugees know that if they want sponsorship in a gay situation, then they can come to their agencies at the camp and ask for sponsorship through Metropolitan Community Church. The government is treating it as a church preference, and they're in that way trying to avoid identification of homosexuals.
Also, the Cubans, a lot of them had been identified already. Castro had stamped on their passports that they were homosexuals, and there was a large number of them that had that wording stamped. And once they gave the government that also identified them. So our group has not gone in and given the government any kind of a list. We've been working with mainly World Church Services. They're very good about not giving the government the preference list. So
don't you anticipate maybe some adverse reaction, though, from the public at large here in Los Angeles?
We have adverse problems with the public at large all over the country, not just in Los Angeles, just on the whole issue of homosexuality. So when all at once you have, quote, people who have come to this country, when we have an economic problem where jobs are very bad, automatically Americans are hostile at this point against Cubans, period, whether they're homosexual or not. But that's true, the white majority are usually hostile against minority groups anyway who they feel are taking, quote, their jobs.
You mentioned there's hostility against Cubans already, isn't there going to be that much more hostility against gay?
Massive problems. There will be some, of course.
You mentioned the present law.